YouTube, welcome back, another vlog. Very exciting news. We got a new addition to the fleet, not another bike. Bike is currently under construction. We got a couple things we're tinkering with, but very exciting news. We finally purchased a bike hauler. The Taco 2022 Toyota Sport Tacoma. Now it is a little dirty, you know, me being the detailer that I am, I'm a little embarrassed, low key, but it is a little dirty, and you know, it is what it is. But 5-foot bed, it fits the bike, but I do have to put the tailgate down, and you know, it's not too bad in here. It's comfortable, like 25 highway-ish, I guess, if you want to say that. But very excited. 10,000 miles on this thing, like brand new, almost brand new, 2022. Now I know that this isn't my typical type of video because obviously this is a bike channel, but the bike hauler must get me around in order to travel the country, and I needed something to transport the bike. So here we are with the truck. I wanted to get a van, but truck was just more, you know, it was just a better decision, and it actually fits in my garage, so that's a benefit. But the purpose of today's video, the main purpose, is we're going to be doing an install on a Injen intake, and I actually am going to be testing if it's going to be any improvement. Now, I also do have a throttle body spacer that I'm going to be installing as well. So I'm going to be doing a actual rear wheel test with my draggy. So anyone who has used one of these before, it's a GPS unit that has different variables that you can measure and test. You know, basically, instead of you going to a drag strip, this is going to be within a tenth of accuracy of what you might actually be doing for performance. So the goal is to see if there is any difference, because I'm going to be doing the Injen intake install, and then I'm going to be doing the throttle body spacer install, and we're going to see if it actually improves anything on the top. This is a ram air. It's actually got a tube that sits in the front right behind the grill, so that's going to be definitely beneficial. But we're also installing the AirAid throttle body spacer. It's such an easy install, but I've read a lot of things about these. It's such a simple thing to put on your truck, but I mean, even cars have it too that you can benefit from. But as you are right now, this is a totally bone stock TRD Pro 4x4. Nothing to it. We got the cover off, but totally bone stock. And after I do some draggy testing, I'm gonna do a comparison and show you guys what the 0 to 60 is for this truck with the intake on and intake off. But I'll actually have it rear wheel testing because I'll be using the draggy. So let's get to it. All right, we are live, we're out. So we're gonna do some testing, like I said. So I wanna see, the draggy's mounted on, it's basically got satellites that connected. I think it's 3 satellites at one point that it'll connect. I'm gonna try to do this as equal of a spot as I can. So I'm just doing the same loop, and I'm at this point in my gas tank. I got 5/8 of a tank, and we're just gonna see. We're gonna see what this thing can do for a 0 to 60, and then we're gonna compare. I would actually like to see, I know it's mainly for like it's gonna obviously help with gas mileage putting the Injen on, but the goal obviously is to see maybe it'll accelerate a little more. Yes, I know it's a truck, but also I'm never gonna be able to build a car that accelerates as fast as my bike. So you know what? If we can have a little bit more fun with the truck, then why not? So let's get the testing. Now this is going a little uphill. .6. So 3 runs, 7.1, 7.7, 7.6. So you get the idea. It's about 7.5 seconds that it takes them from 0 to 60. So maybe we'll see a better time in the 6s for a intake install, but who knows? Let's go find out. Let's put this baby on. All right, so here's everything that's included. This is obviously separate. This is the AirAid throttle body spacer. It comes with these 4 bolts. They're longer, so it can actually take up the gap, put the washers underneath. Make sure when you install this, there's an O-ring that you have to very gently press into the front. And make sure when you install this also, if you're imagining the intake, the air is going into the inlet from the throttle body this direction, you mount it this way in order to, you know, have it correctly. But I'll show that when I install it. We got the beautiful filter from Injen. Nice air box. It's huge.
That's what she said.
This is the intake dam that I was talking about that sits in the front of the truck. And that's obviously the intake with the couple of bolts and the coupler for the intake tube. So let's get started. So these are the tools that you're going to be needing. Screwdriver, flathead screwdriver, 10mm socket, 12mm socket, an extension ratchet, and then we're also using, I believe this is a T6. I could be wrong on that size, but those are your tools. So very simply, you take this off the cover, shows at the very top of the engine. I gotta clean that. So to begin with all this, you take a 10mm wrench. These bolts, there's 4 on each side or each corner. And in order to remove the intake first, you take off this coupler and then do that. So to get at all of this, you start with removing the intake tube, remove this coupler, and you come to this side and you hit these 2 pieces to undo those, and the entire thing will lift up. You see the stock intake filter there, but we'll get this intake tube and we'll keep going. So you have on the top of the airbox that's factory, you have this clip that's here. Ideally, you'd want to lift it with a pair of pliers or there's a special tool for this, but I do not have that tool. So here we are, ripping that out like an SOB. And then we have to remove the sensor that's on the intake tube, which looks like it's 2 little screws, Phillips head. We'll grab that. Now when you take off the sensor, please be careful. Use a proper size Phillips head because it's probably much easier to remove with it still on the truck, but just be careful with these screws. They can strip very easily, so take your time on that. And after you remove that sensor, you also undo this intake tube and the whole top should pop off. So 2 screws, be careful with those. Remove this, take a clip, take off the hose, remove the hose clamp. I believe this is a vacuum hose, but take that off if you actually wanted to. I guess. Look like I've never recorded a YouTube video before. And pop that off. And out she goes. Entire piece. So ugly. Of course, take out your intake filter. That is useless. Sit in there. And then we have 3 bolts. 1, 2, 3 deeper sockets. This will remove the entire box and it will be empty and ready to start installing. I would also suggest using an extension for this. It'll make it a little easier. This is a 12mm for all 3 of these bolts. Break them loose. Break them loose. Ooh, that one's on there too. Break it loose. This one's just holding it in the back. And we'll get this going. And out she goes, the stock intake box. Huh. Look at all that space. This is all off. We're going to be loosening these 4 bolts like I mentioned before. These are 10mm bolts. Just loosen those and I'll show you guys how to install that. Bolts. So these are the factory bolts. You will be removing these, and they include 4 nice black bolts. Now make sure the cone section, I guess if you want, is going into the intake. So it sits inside of here. Make sure this gasket is good. Make sure the gasket's pressed into this. They include this gasket with the kit. This sits in there, and we'll just install it. Now they do give you the washers, but I also would put just a little bit of Loctite on it just to be safe. A little bit of blue Loctite, never hurt nobody, and it's easy to get off. So line this up. And also make sure when you're installing this, make sure the AirAid logo is facing upright. So here's the 2 intake boxes. So this is stock. You saw that the grommets that were sitting in each one of these holes. So Easiest way that I found to remove them is you press out the center cylinder, and the rubber grommet will be easier to remove. But what you're going to be doing is you're taking the intake box and facing it this direction, facing it like so in the engine bay. Make sure you install these beforehand, and then you can bolt it down. Rubber grommets are in, press them in. Now let's install. Airbox is in, all 3 bolts. I had a little bit of difficulty with the one that's furthest, closest to the fender, so make sure you tighten that one down first. The other 2 go in pretty easily once that one is threaded. But I also forgot to mention, so you're also going to be removing this piece because the front inlet for the intake is going to be sitting there as well. So just take a flathead. These pop out. Make sure you don't lose them because you will be reusing these. But once you loosen that, these all pop up, and you go on removing this piece. Take this piece off that goes. The other thing I forgot to mention with the sensor, which is now dangling because I'm an idiot. So with the hardware that is provided, so the sensor, the intake sensor, is going to be mounting here. Make sure that the arrow is, obviously there really is only one way to fit this, so it comes with included screws. Make sure you get that in there. I would do this first. I would do this before you install it onto the intake. It just makes it a lot easier. You also see the vacuum connection, but that's going to sit directly into the intake. Okay, so next step, so you're going to be installing the filter. Now if you look, there is a ridge. There's also ridges on the inside of the box. So you want to spin this to where it locks into place. Let's see, there it goes, it's locked in. You actually can't physically remove it. And that's where the inlet of the intake is going to be sitting right there. And you'll have that connected, and you'll put the coupler here, which is also provided by Injen. And we'll keep moving. Now make sure also when you're tightening these down that you also have these facing in the same direction. It just makes it easier to tighten them when you're done. And then you have the vacuum hose that's behind it, like right here, sits perfectly in front of it. Just pop that on if you can, or just use a set of pliers. That's on. Again, make sure the sensor, the arrow that sits on the top, is facing into the intake. Make sure all these are on. This is in. And start tightening it down. All right, so it's all tightened down. Intake tube, vacuum tube is on the back. It's connected properly all the way on the breather. These are too tight. These are tight. This sits inside of it. The final piece is the tube for the front inlet, which will sit in on top. This goes inside of the piece. So it just looks, look at that, that is amazing. And like I said, you keep the grommets to hold down the piece and you're good. Once this is held down, you have the intake tube here. There's 4 more bolts. That will end up going into these holes, those 2 on each side. Tighten those down, and the intake is all set. And ladies and gentlemen, Injen intake, AirAid throttle body spacer install. We're done. All right, let's see if everything's good. No check engine lights. Good to go. No lights. All right. So as you guys saw earlier in the video, I did a 0 to 60 time. It was basically mid 7s. I'll show you the screenshot that I took earlier. But this is what I ended up doing pretty consistently was, so 7.6, 7.9, 7.16, but that was invalid because that one was downhill. So that's how draggy works. Basically you have a variable that you can do a 1% downhill run for it to be valid. Anything more than that, and it's assisting you. So yeah, like this one had a 4% down. I was going 4 degrees downhill, and that made it invalid. So that was my fastest time. And then so basically mid 7 seconds is the range with totally stock without these pieces. So let's see what it does now. What I will say already that I notice, I am going up a pretty steep hill right now, and not steep, but enough. I'm barely having to hit the throttle for this thing to actually get up the hill. So this thing, both of these mods 1000% increase the torque on this thing. I can feel it already. Now I might be going downhill a little bit here, I can't tell, but this is the same road that we tested on before, so I'm trying to be as accurate as I can between the two comparisons, so this is as best as I'm gonna get. So okay, a little bit of foot on the brake. You can definitely hear it too. That thing is throaty. 7.3. Okay, 7.3, a little faster, so not bad. So it actually did help. I would say that this thing needs something to control the throttle a little better. So like they make a pedal commander or a sprint booster, because the pedal lags when you accelerate it, and if that didn't lag, I bet that would cut off another third. But yeah, we went from basically 7.6, 7.62, 7.65 to 7.3. So like, you know, close to half a second increase, which, you know what? It's just an intake and a throttle body spacer. So, I mean, what do you expect at that point? But yeah, I'm actually kind of happy with it. I like the way it sounds. I know it's gonna help with gas mileage, which I know it's a truck, but you know, the least you can do is try to get a little bit of gas mileage with these things. I mean, right now I'm lucky for, if I'm really trying, I'm lucky for 23 on the highway. So, but thanks everyone for joining. This is my first video I did with the Taco, but you know, this is my bike page, so every once in a while, if I do something to the truck, I probably will share it, just, you know, just to share the experience and the install and whatever, because I do plan to do a couple things to this thing. But thanks for joining. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and we'll talk soon.
It's